Do you know the difference between a data controller and a data processor under GDPR? Today, we delve into the roles and responsibilities that define the GDPR landscape. You see, GDPR is not just about protecting personal data, it is also about assigning clear responsibilities for who does what when it comes to data protection. It's a bit like a play where each actor has a specific role to play, and understanding each role is crucial for the whole production to run smoothly. In the grand theatre of GDPR, there are three main roles: the data controller, the data processor, and the data protection officer, or DPO. These roles are not just fancy titles. They carry with them specific responsibilities and obligations. The data controller, for instance, is the entity that determines the purposes and means of processing personal data. They're like the director of our play, deciding what happens and how it happens. The data processor, on the other hand, is the entity that processes personal data on behalf of the controller. They're the backstage crew carrying out the tasks as directed by the controller, and then there's the data protection officer, or DPO. The DPO is the watchdog, keeping an eye on everything to ensure that GDPR compliance is maintained. But it's not enough just to know these roles exist. It's also crucial to accurately identify who in your organization fits into which role. This is because GDPR compliance requires clear delineation of responsibilities. Everyone needs to know their part in the play, or else the whole production can fall apart. So why does all this matter? Well, without a clear understanding of these roles and their responsibilities, an organization runs the risk of falling foul of GDPR regulations. And trust me, that's a performance no one wants to be a part of. Understanding these key roles is the first step towards achieving GDPR compliance. So let's take that step together, shall we? What does it mean to be a data controller under GDPR? Well, let's dive right in. In the world of data protection, the term data controller isn't just a fancy title. It is a fundamental role defined under GDPR. Picture the data controller as the captain of a ship, navigating the vast sea of data protection. This entity determines the purposes and means of processing personal data. So the data controller decides why and how personal data should be processed. But as we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. The data controller's role doesn't end with decision-making. They also bear the brunt of ensuring GDPR compliance of processing activities. This means they must implement data protection principles and respect the rights of data subjects. Now, what are these data protection principles? There's 7 we covered in an earlier module. They are lawfulness, fairness, transparency, purpose limitation, data minimization, accuracy, storage limitation, and integrity and confidentiality. The data controller must ensure all these principles are upheld in every data processing activity. Also, a data controller has to respect the rights of data subjects. This includes rights like access, rectification, erasure, restriction of processing, data portability, and objecting to processing. The data controller has some specific obligations too. One of those is data protection by design and by default. This principle means that the data controller must ensure data protection measures are integrated into every aspect of data processing activities from the get-go. Another obligation is the Data Protection Impact Assessment, or DPIA for short. This is a process to identify and minimize the data protection risks of a project. DPIAs are mandatory for processing that is likely to result in high risk to individuals' interests. Lastly, the data controller is responsible for record keeping. This means maintaining a record of processing activities under its responsibility. This record helps to demonstrate compliance with the GDPR and can be requested by supervisory authorities. In a nutshell, being a data controller is an important role. It requires a deep understanding of GDPR, a commitment to data protection, and a proactive approach to compliance. They steer the ship of data protection, ensuring it sails smoothly through the waters of GDPR compliance, and ultimately protecting the personal data of individuals. Now let's turn our attention to the role of the data processor. Just as a conductor guides an orchestra, the data controller instructs the data processor. The processor in this symphony of data protection is the entity that processes personal data on behalf of the controller. So it's not the one calling the tune, but it plays a significant part in the performance. The responsibilities of the data processor are threefold. Firstly, it must process data only as instructed by the controller. Think of it as a talented musician playing notes as written in the score, not improvising a solo. The data processor doesn't decide the why and how of data processing, it follows the controller's lead. Secondly, the data processor must ensure data security. This is akin to a musician taking good care of their instrument. The processor ensures that the data it handles is well protected, implementing measures to prevent unauthorized or unlawful processing, accidental loss, destruction, or damage. Finally, the data processor assists the controller in meeting GDPR requirements. It steps up to the plate when it's time to respond to data subjects' requests, such as access to personal data or deletion of data, and helps in conducting data protection impact assessments. It's like a reliable bandmate who's ready to help when the tempo changes or a complex passage comes up. The GDPR also lays down some specific obligations for the data processor. One of these is the duty to maintain records of processing activities. This is like keeping a detailed logbook of every rehearsal and performance. These records should contain information like the name and contact details of the processor, categories of processing carried out, data transfers, and the like. The data processor is also obligated to cooperate with supervisory authorities. If a conductor, the data protection authority in this case, comes to fine-tune the performance, the processor must be ready to engage, answer questions, and show its records. Moreover, if a data breach occurs, the data processor must promptly inform the data controller. It's like admitting a missed note during a performance instead of hoping nobody noticed. This transparency is crucial to ensure that necessary measures can be taken swiftly. One might ask, why does all this matter? The answer is simple. The data processor, while not making the key decisions, handles the personal data. It's the one that carries out the majority of the processing activities. In conclusion, the role of the data processor is crucial in the grand orchestration of data protection. It processes data under the conductor's watchful eye. The data controller ensures the safety of the data, assists the controller, and cooperates with the authorities. It is a role of responsibility and trust. The data processor, while guided by the data controller, also plays a crucial role in GDPR compliance. Let's now dive into the role of the Data Protection Officer, or DPO. The appointment of a DPO isn't always necessary, but becomes mandatory for certain organizations. These include public authorities, organizations processing large-scale special category data, or those engaging in systematic monitoring. This role is pivotal to ensuring that an organization is on its A-game when it comes to data protection and GDPR compliance. The DPO, in essence, is the organization's independent advisor and monitor for GDPR compliance. They are the beacon that guides the organization through the murky waters. Operating independently, the DPO is not swayed by the organization's other interests. Their sole focus is ensuring that the organization is compliant with GDPR and other data protection laws. The DPO has a pretty hefty task list. One key task is to inform and advise the organization about data protection laws. This includes not just GDPR, but also other local and international data protection laws that the organization must comply with. The DPO must stay ahead of the curve, keeping up to date with changes and developments in these laws, and ensuring that the organization adapts accordingly. Another crucial task of the DPO is monitoring the organization's GDPR compliance. This means checking that data processing activities comply with GDPR, that data subjects' rights are respected, and that data protection principles are implemented effectively. The DPO is also responsible for conducting data protection impact assessments, or DPIAs. But the DPO is not just an internal figure. They also act as a contact point for data subjects, that's you and me, and supervisory authorities. If a data subject has a query or complaint about how their data is being processed, they can reach out to the DPO. Similarly, if a supervisory authority has a question or needs to conduct an investigation, the DPO is their go-to person. All these tasks might sound overwhelming, but remember, the DPO is not alone. They work in tandem with data controllers and processors, ensuring that everyone is playing their part in data protection. The DPO is like the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the instruments are in tune and playing in harmony to create a beautiful symphony of data protection. In summary, the DPO plays a vital role in ensuring GDPR compliance within an organization. They are the compass that guides the organization through the complex world of data protection laws, the watchdog that monitors compliance, and the bridge between the organization, data subjects, and supervisory authorities. A DPO is an essential figure in an organization, driving GDPR compliance and serving as a point of contact. Their role is not just about ticking boxes or avoiding fines, it's about fostering a culture of data protection and respect for personal data within the organization. So how do these roles interact with each other? Let's dive into the dynamics of the working relationship between the data controller, data processor, and the data protection officer, or DPO. The data controller, being the entity that outlines the purposes and means of processing personal data, has a leading role in this interaction. They set the direction and lay down the guidelines for how the data should be processed. But they don't do this in isolation. They work closely with the data processor to ensure that the processing is carried out as per the GDPR rules. The data processor, on the other hand, is the entity that processes personal data on behalf of the controller. They follow the instructions provided by the controller, but they also have a responsibility to ensure data security and assist the controller in meeting GDPR requirements. They are not mere executors. They actively contribute to the GDPR compliance process. Then we have the Data Protection Officer. The DPO acts as an independent advisor and monitor for GDPR compliance within the organization. They serve as a bridge between the data controller and data processor, providing advice, monitoring compliance, and acting as a contact point for data subjects and supervisory authorities. Clear communication and contractual agreements are fundamental in defining the responsibilities among these roles. The controller, processor, and DPO must all understand their roles and responsibilities and how they interact with each other. This understanding ensures a smooth operation and a robust data protection system. Consider this. A data controller decides to implement a new processing activity. They discuss this with the DPO, who advises on the potential impacts and necessary safeguards. The controller then instructs the data processor, who implements the activity while ensuring the necessary security measures are in place. This is an example of effective collaboration and role interaction in practice. Effective collaboration and clear delineation of responsibilities are key to successful GDPR compliance. Remember, GDPR is not just about rules and regulations, it's about how we work together to protect personal data. And that's where the interaction between the data controller, data processor, and DPO becomes crucial. All of the roles, data controller or processor, face hurdles. The most common ones include the complexity of GDPR regulations, lack of awareness among staff, and the sheer volume of data to manage. These challenges can be overcome with the right strategies. Firstly, investment in comprehensive GDPR training for teams. This will ensure everyone is on the same page about their responsibilities. Secondly, development of robust data protection policies. This will provide a clear roadmap for compliance efforts. Lastly, to engage with data protection authorities when required. They can provide valuable guidance and support. And let's not forget about technology. From automated data mapping tools to advanced data protection solutions, technology plays a crucial role in supporting GDPR compliance efforts. Remember, overcoming GDPR compliance challenges requires strategic planning, continuous learning, and the right technology. In conclusion, understanding and defining the roles of data controller, processor, and DPO is crucial for GDPR compliance. This module has focused on the key roles that GDPR recognizes in the data protection landscape. We've delved into the responsibilities and obligations of each role, from the data controller who determines the purposes and means of processing personal data, to the data processor who carries out the processing on behalf of the controller, and the data protection officer, an independent advisor and monitor for GDPR compliance within the organization. We've underscored the importance of effective collaboration and clear delineation of responsibilities among these roles. Such synergy can significantly enhance an organization's ability to protect personal data, fulfilling its obligations under the GDPR and maintaining the trust of data subjects.